community outreach with Kipton.
Bernie Bowling, chairman of the Transportation Policy Committee. Thank you, Tom.
I'm Howard Chevrolet, City of Middletown.
Jared Paley, the executive director here at TIPA.
Matt Mignay, City of Jeffersontown. Kevin Beatty, Town of Clarksville, Indiana. Kevin Purcell, City of Charlestown.
Nicole George, Metro.
Jason Sawala, KYTC.
Isidro Delgado, Division of Planning, KYTC.
Tom Hall, KRTC District 5 Planning. Jeremy Shaw, Kipton.
Chris Nicholas, Kipsa.
Freddie Hill, Kipton.
Spencer Williams.
Vinay Paul with HMB consulting engineer.
Levi Chandler, Metro. So shall I do the online folks? Well, instead of taking roll, do we have anybody? I'll check most folks off the list. How about Bullitt County? Anybody online from Bullitt County? Don't see anyone. City of Jeffersonville. City of New Albany. Or Shively. Clark County. See Brian.
Dixon here.
Hi, Brian. Good afternoon.
Hey.
How about Floyd County? NDOT. I think I see Taylor just joining us just right now. It said she's connecting her audio. So Taylor, if you can hear us, thank you for joining us. Is there anybody else from KYTC? Jason and Isidro are in the room, and Tom. Looks like I see a couple, or at least one from Matt's here.
Matt Bullock, District 5.
Hi, I'm Matt. See a couple others.
Ron Rigney and Susan Open with KYTC Division of Program Management.
Thank you all for joining us. Louisville Metro, Miss George is here. Anybody else from Metro? Did I see Mike on it?
Yep, Mike King here.
Oldham County.
Jim Urban for Judge Vogel.
Hi, Jim. That's Town of Clarksville. Let's see, Mike, you're on here too. Do I see you, Mike?
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. And last but certainly not least, only alphabetically, anyways, Tom. Do we have any of our advisory members? Anybody from Federal Highways on the line? I think there is.
It's Tanya Higdon.
Hi, Tanya.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Did I miss anybody? Taylor, we said hi right when you were joining us. I think we've got all the folks that are in the room. Thank you all for joining us. We've got a full house in the room, those that can't see on the aisle. And we've got a pretty full house on Zoom. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2 is we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The June meeting, can we take those together? The June meeting and the July special meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look over those minutes? And so, have a motion? Second. And a second. Any questions, changes? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is public comment period. Greg?
Yes, we did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting, and I don't see anything in the Q&A.
Okay. We have July PPC special meeting recap.
Something wrong.
We got one more. It's number 4.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to go through the June outreach report. First off, I'll get to the numbers for our social media and our website. As you see, Facebook had a really good month. We were up almost 5,000 impressions, 560 engagements. Engagements were up also for Twitter, and impressions are also up again for Instagram. We did have a paid campaign, which took a little bit of Amendment 2 as well as Amendment 3. Talk about it here in a minute. Really good numbers from that, almost 30,000 impressions, over 3,000 engagements. And website analytics and numbers keep going up on all our pages, which is a good thing to see. So I mentioned amendment 3, Chris is gonna have a little bit more of that here in a minute, but, I'll go through the numbers for that from a outreach perspective. It ran from June 23rd to July the 7th. We had 2 email campaigns, both of those saw, good numbers, for the opens as well as the link clicks, those are both up compared to our previous one for amendment 2. We did our publishments in our NPO libraries, our business association and chamber newsletters, as well as sending them out to the Louisville Metro Council members for sharing on their social media as well as in their newsletters. Our overall numbers really good, 32,000 impressions, over 3,000 engagements. I do want to mention that for the first time since I've been here, we had a request for a translation in Spanish. So I think that shows that the targeting that we do on social media is working. We do that in the low income, environmental justice areas, limited English speaking. So I think since we did get that request, that kind of shows that the targeting is working. All in all, we got 24 comments, 13 project upvotes. We had a public meeting on June the 5th. What did we hear? That's a big question. Comment for the themes, reimagine Ninth Street got 12 project upvotes. Largely they were in favor of the project. We had a couple comments that suggested removing the exit and the entrance ramps at 9th and I-64. One concern that did come in is an impact on freight traffic for this area. Comment mentioned that 9th Street was originally planned as a truck route in 2003 to keep semis out of the residential neighborhoods. So the concern was, what is this going to do to impact the semis? Where are they going to go when they're coming off 9th? Widening of I-65 saw one project upvote. It had concerns ranging from the cost of the project to future maintenance, as well as added congestion and environmental impact. I-64 saw the same concerns and the same comments, very similar, also did not receive any upvotes. Events that we attended last month, we went to Cyclovia in downtown Louisville. We also attended a couple of employee health fairs at the Golf House at the Crown Plaza Hotel. And I did my monthly check-in with the Kentucky Association of Government Communicators. If there is any questions, I will take them at this time, but if not, that wraps up my report for this month.
Anyone have questions? Seeing none, we'll skip on the July PPC special meeting recap. Andy?
Thank you very much. As most of y'all know, we had a special meeting of this committee back on July 11th, just a couple weeks ago. This agenda item 5 and agenda item 6 are quite related. And so we'll recap the events of the special meeting. And then we'll talk about kind of what one of the next steps, not directly related to the special meeting, but it might as well be. So the reason we had that special meeting on July 11th was because we had one project in question in Oldham County, intersection at Kentucky 329 and 329 bypass it. It's an Oldham County project that's being administered through the LPA administration process at KYTC. And that project went to a letting in, I think in late June. And the bids that came in were effectively double the next slide, please, double the engineer's estimates. Okay. And so that project needed a healthy cost increase. That project is funded, by the way, through the SLO program or the STBG NPO program. That's fine. Cost increases come in regularly and we see a lot of them these days. Okay. The issue with this project and the urgency of the request was surrounded by the idea that due to a federal transportation accounting databases discrepancies, there's 2 of them. There's 2 databases, not discrepancies. Let's hope there's just one discrepancy. One's called the FEMA system. That's the one that FHWA uses, FMIS. The other one is called Delphi, and Delphi is used, I believe, more broadly across the US DOT. Well, those databases or those accounting systems, they didn't agree, and there's a discrepancy. At one time was thought to be $3.5 billion, since been lessened to about $1 billion. Why does that matter? That matters because it could, and it still can, I suppose, put some amount of old money, if you will, at risk. Okay? And as we know, our SLO balance or STPG balance here is quite large, and that money should be viewed as being at some level of risk. Okay, and so KYTC wanted to ensure that the money doesn't get lost, that we lose as few dollars as possible, hopefully zero. And KYTC committed to spending that $3.8 million toward the oldest of those dollar amounts, or those oldest FEMA system codes, I guess, the oldest dollars from prior highway bills. Okay. To sweeten the pot, so to speak, KYTC also committed to providing the additional local match. If we have a cost increase of $1.8 million, that's a healthy local match commitment too. So that was a very kind thing of them too. Next slide, please. So we covered a little bit. We covered that. We also brought this up. This is what we currently have programmed in the KIP to TIP. And technically it's KIP to TIP plus 1 year. Okay, so we program our Kentucky projects out through fiscal year 2027. Our TIP currently goes through 26. For those that were around last fall, this would include the projects through the last recent call for projects. So you can see on your screen or on the screen in the room, you know, where those projects are and how much is currently programmed. And that has, and technically there's more dollars programmed, if you will, because that does not include older phases, projects that might have preliminary phase, the design phase, perhaps a right-of-way phase, perhaps utility relocation phase that has already even occurred. So put that out there. And then last but not least, we covered, next slide, please. We covered our, remember I mentioned that FEMIS, FMIS, Fiscal Management Information Systems, I believe it stands for. What does that thing, what does that document, what does that accounting system show that we have on our books? Okay, and here it is. Mr. Rigney from KYTC will be speaking to you all in just a few minutes on the next agenda item. But as he's referred to it, the pre-bill money, pre-BIL, bipartisan infrastructure law, the pre-bill money. That's the money that's, we could say, is old money now. We're in the BIL era or the IIJA era. That's the most recently authorized federal transportation bill. In our name, in our region's name, there's $37 million at the beginning of this fiscal year available to obligate. So far, the fiscal year, those dollars bounce, and it's actually obligated a negative amount. I guess when projects get closed out, there's some money that goes back into the pot, so to speak. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. The CRISA issue, the CRISA was the coronavirus stimulus. We talked about that, I believe, last month or the month before last. KYTC has committed, they came and they said, hey, these dollars are at risk of rescission. You all will probably recall that. And so those $6.49 million on the Kentucky side, KYTC traded out money, if you will. They took the CRISA money and obligated it directly to the I-Move project. The I-Move project is Gene Snyder widening the I-64 interchange, Gene Snyder, I-71 interchange, Gene Snyder, as well as the I-71 widening out to Crestwood. So 4 projects in one, if you will. So they obligated that money immediately. So that's good. That's a good thing. The bill money, BIL money, we have $45 million available to obligate. And here we are in late July now. This is occurring as of early July. Obligations are only in the neighborhood of about 4.8 million or about 10%. Okay. So sum total, you can see there down the bottom, 89 million. We've obligated 11, about 12%. However, that 12.6% includes that 6.4 million that KYTC obligated for us. So that 12.6% is a bit deceiving. We roughly do the math and say that the obligations have been about half. There's still some portion of this year to go. We've got 2 months and change. But this was covered in depth at that meeting, discussing the issue, the ongoing issue of obligation of these SLO dollars, SLO and TAP dollars. I should lump them both in there together. that probably concludes the discussion on that special meeting. The next agenda item is very related, so perhaps I'll pause and ask for questions. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to
Have
hear
any questions?
or discussion.
Seeing none.
Here. Andy, just for clarity, could you go through briefly what the committee did and what happened subsequently?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the cost increase was approved at that meeting, so that was good. That was, and we're thankful for that. That project has that money has either been obligated or it's ready to be obligated very soon, it's my understanding. So that's good. That 35 million number, that was the amount at risk. It should have immediately been reduced to, let's say, 31, 32, however the math works out. And so after the meeting, or about the same time as that meeting, those federal accounting discrepancy apparently shrunk by a large amount. Okay, and so meaningful to the discussion is that the level of risk may have come down, if it may be substantially, but it's still, the risk is there. As I understand it, and there's at least a couple people that can talk to this better than I can. We are able to obligate more of that old money than we were before the discrepancy was mostly rectified. Is that fair?
Better for Ron, but I'll nod in agreement.
Okay, all right. So yes, so very thankful that money got obligated. Hopefully it's the first of many projects that get obligated here late in our fiscal year here. Or the state fiscal year, I should say.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to item number 6. KYTC funding transfer discussion.
All right,
Andy.
thank you. I will hand it over to Ron in just 1 second. So I go in depth in the meeting packet for those that are joining online, in the email I sent out as well. At the end of each summer, let's say, there's what's known as a August redistribution process. And that's a time when state DOTs can effectively stake their claim to some money that their counterpart DOTs aren't going to be able to spend by the end of the federal fiscal year. Is that fair, Jason?
Well, not money necessarily, but authority to
spend money. Thank you. And so KYTC typically takes full advantage of this. NDOT does as well. Okay, to get that additional spending authority at the end of the year. Okay, so that's good. KYTC is going to pursue it again this year. Mr. Rod Rigney is joining us today, and I guess first to last week or a week and a half ago, let's say, Ron reached out and expressed an interest in doing what KYTC and KIPTA TPC have agreed to in the past. That is for KYTC to effectively borrow the SLO or STBG money to be paid back, just much like CRISA, so that they can, in this case, not only use that spending authority, but gain further spending authority. Ron, I'm doing a poor job of describing it. I'm sure you'll do a great job. We have Ron Rigney, Kentucky KYTC Program Management. Ron, can you enlighten our committee on some of the goings-ons there, please, sir?
Sure, Andy. Thank you. And no, you did a great job. You made my job easy. You did really well. But yes, and what Andy was trying to explain there, well, I'll back just a little bit about the pre-bill and the bill apportionment codes. When the first emergency meeting that we had to have quickly, at that point in time, the states was only allowed to use like 5% of the pre-bill apportionment codes. And so in other words, 95% of those old pre-billed SLO dollars were subject to rescissions. And what we were trying to do was quickly use as much of that as we possibly could within that 5% constraint that to eliminate the possibility of any rescissions on that. After that emergency meeting, FHWA notified us that through the reconciliation of the FEMA accounting system and the Delphi accounting system, they had released now that the states could use up to 70% of the pre-bill codes, which is a good thing. But it also, that still means there's 30% of those pre-billed apportionment codes that could be subject to rescissions. Through some congressional mandate, we could lose those. Similar to the situation on the CRISA funds, that when the debt ceiling budget approval through Congress was resolved, it was voted on, approved, any of those old CRISA funds that had not been used were rescinded. So with that in mind, there's still 30% of those old pre-bill out of that 31 million that Andy mentioned, they're still subject to rescissions on that. But if we could use up to 70% of that, which is roughly about 22 million that could be available. So whatever, and Andy talked about the end of year August redistribution process, and that is a yearly process that FHWA, they contact all the states, and basically they ask the question, are you going to be able to use all of your current year spending authority prior to September 30th of that given year? And of course, we always say, yes, we are going to use our remaining spending authority. And then they also ask, well, if you can use all of your remaining spending authority, can you use any additional spending authority? And that's where we're at. We had to turn in that response last week, a week before last, actually. And we have applied and have asked, we can use all of our remaining, and we're trying to get additional spending authority. But the way that, in order to ask for that additional spending authority, the way the federal program works, and I don't want to get too far down the weeds here, but real quickly, in order to use $1 worth of spending authority, you have to have $1 worth of apportionment. Each year when FHWA, they give the yearly federal aid highway funding, they give an allocation of the formula funds through the federal aid highway program. That's an apportionment value. Then they give you the authority to spend part of those apportionments. It's normally around the 90 to 92% range. So in other words, if you used all of your spending authority, they would be about 10 to 8% of your apportionments that could roll over to the next year. So those are called carryover apportionments. Thus, that's how these pre-billed apportionments have been able to add up. You don't lose those. You're able to roll over your apportionments. And the only way you lose those apportionments is through some type of rescission, congressional rescission. And that's what we're trying to protect against. So when I applied for additional spending authority, we were in hopes, and in talking with Andy, we asked that if we could, like we have done in the past, and we've done this in years past, getting permission to borrow the SLO funding apportionments so that we can ask for additional spending authority. And the best way to explain that additional spending authority, that gives you the ability to spend some of those old carryover apportionment, and that's in and above what you would traditionally get that given fiscal year. So in order for me to be able to ask for additional spending authority, we'd asked if we were successful in getting this additional spending authority, if we could borrow some of the SLO funds to use. And again, we would use those those funds, continue to use them on the iMove project.
So if I can jump in right here, when Ron reached out last Monday, I believe it was, he needed an answer pretty much, you know, that same day or so. And so I discussed it with Chairman Bowling, and we, you know, as I said in the meeting memo, we conditionally approved that. We thought this was a sound thing for us to do. A couple of those reasons include, it does allow for, as we understand it, $30 additional million to come into the state of Kentucky by making this move. So that benefits the whole state. And also, what it also should do, it should spin down those old codes. Remember that 35 million I mentioned on that last presentation that might be down to 31 million? We should get those spent down. Effective really immediately. Are both of those things still true, Ron?
Correct, yes. What we would do is we would use some of those old codes up to, if they only allow us to use up to 70%, that would be roughly about 22 million out of the old codes.
So spending that money down is critical, right? We've got to get that money spent down to put less of it at risk. This is very similar, as I mentioned earlier, to some similar moves made, I think most recently in 2019, and then a couple of years before that. So again, this request has been conditionally approved, and I reached out to the TPC that same day to describe this in detail, but it has not been officially approved by this body yet. And so, and to be clear, the request is for $40 million, borrowing the $40 million. Is that still correct, Ron?
Correct, up to $40 million. And I failed to mention, Andy, and you may get to this, but if we borrow that, then we would replace that 40 million dollar for dollar with our traditional STP dollars for projects within the KIPTA area.
And so the LPAs in the room should see little to no difference in the administration of their LPA projects. It should effectively be the same process. So it's a low risk proposition in at least my eyes. But again, that has not been approved by the TPC officially. There may be some other options if this body does not approve it. But at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions or entertain some discussion on this topic.
I do have a question. I just want to make sure I'm following along. We're using the term borrow. Is it almost the same to say that we're moving a funding source from one to the other? Or is it really truly borrowing? And I guess the only question I would have, and I'm supportive and not, we'll support the conditional approval, but it sounds like there is just a teensy bit of risk for KIPTA region. If we're borrowing, if we're saying, okay, fine, use these SLO dollars, but then something does happen and other dollars are rescinded. And I know KYTC has agreed in writing to pay them back, but I guess maybe my question is, if we're really truly borrowing, saying like, you can't use these dollars for this, we're gonna move them over here, KYTC agrees to pay them back, how will KYTC pay them back if something falls through or there's further federal budget decisions or something? So that's maybe, I know that was kind of a long-winded question, but I can maybe.
Can I take that, Andy?
Yes, please.
Please.
Okay. No, and that's a great question. And the reason why it is, it's when we say borrow the SLO funds, okay, think of it this way. Your dedicated SLO funds can only be used on projects within the KIPTA area that are eligible for SLO projects. And one of the projects that we want to use those borrowed funds on is on the iMove project, which is an eligible project that can use SLO funds. All right, so we would be using SLO money, apportionments and spending authority toward that project. And then when a project of equal value is ready to move forward, was scheduled in your TIP to be funded with SLO funds, then we would use statewide STP dollars that can move that project forward. It wouldn't come, think of it as two different buckets. You've got a bucket of SLO funds, you've got a bucket of statewide STP funds. When we repay those borrowed SLO funds, we'll pay them out of this STP bucket of funds. And then you can move forward with the project.
All right, thank you. That's what I guess what I'm thinking is, I don't want to use the term shift, since shift projects are a whole other category, but it is almost more like, we're not exactly borrowing, we're just sort of moving, we're assigning a different funding source to a current project, anticipating a state funding source, a commitment from KYTC to use a state surface transportation program to pay for those in the future.
Ron did say that it was a federal program, but it's one that is not sub-allocated to, to the KIPTA region. Does that make sense?
Right, like there's STP state Kentucky dollars, and then there's SLO.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, I'm good, thank you.
What's the timeline for repayment?
As needed. So whenever there's a project, well, we saw how far behind we are, if you will. So the IOU, if you will, would be, as far as I'm concerned, indefinite. There's no strings attached, to my understanding. That you don't have to do it by this time next year or anything like that.
No,
Ron, is that fair?
And again, that's a great question. And Jason and I, we talked about that this morning. You have to remember that, when you use up these apportionments, these borrowed apportionments, those are taking those off of the general ledger sheet that could be subject to rescission, which is a good thing. They're going to use within the KIPTA area. All right. Keep in mind that right now, even with the $40 million that we would be using now, you still have roughly 22 million or so would be left. And you're going to be getting additional 25 sometime around the middle of October. So you're still in that $40 to $50 million of apportionments that you could use on SLO projects. So the payback on those, we wouldn't want to start paying for our IOU on it with STP dollars and then put at risk those apportionments that are still on the books. So you want to use your current apportionments first before we start paying back the others. That's to protect those SLO dollars. Now, that there's other things that might occur that we could use, even if we had to, we could use some state dollars to make that same payback, depending on what the type of project it might be. But traditionally, as Andy mentioned, you would want to use your current apportionments first, so that you can protect them, that they're not subject to rescissions or subject to lapse.
There could be some benefits to doing a state-only funded project that could, on a case-by-case basis, I suppose, to non-federalize a project, perhaps.
Any other questions out there? Discussion.
One question, I think it's a good deal, but the other 30%, where does that lay?
The 30
that's still at risk. If we're getting additional money in October, that number is going to continue to be at risk, right?
Not necessarily. So remember the difference between the pre-bill and the current bill. Okay, so when we get new fiscal 24 money, that adds to the current money. That money is still good. Okay, we still need to spend it efficiently and effectively. And frankly, we need to spend more than we get in a given year to get to start whittling down that balance.
Right,
Right?
I mean, this is my concern, we're still creating a unused balance that could potentially get worse.
We aren't creating an increase to the most at-risk balance.
Okay.
Okay, that makes,
Yes, the rest of that, because we still got some of that.
hopefully that gets spent through the next several projects that get out of the system, okay, right? And we saw that we're not doing this fiscal 23 has not been a great first 3 quarters of the year, has it? And so, and so that money hopefully can be spent down ASAP, and that therefore we would have, with the 22 odd million dollars, I think Ron just mentioned, that cuts it down quite a bit. You know, hopefully that number gets to zero real
We
soon.
still got more money we need to aggressively spend properly.
Yeah, there's no question, through just this summer alone, sitting at this table, that there have been multiple semi-emergencies, if you will, of congressional action or otherwise that have put some of the dollars at risk. And the CRISA one is slightly different, but if we spent the money in the year it was programmed in our name, most of these issues would not be present. Okay, the CRISA one is different because they set a deadline of September 30th, 24, and then that changed like overnight a couple months ago. Okay, so that one is, but most of these would be mitigated if we can get this money spent as it comes in.
Hey, Andy, can I add one point to that?
Yes, please.
We have not received the final determination from FHWA and USDOT on that 30% remaining there. They're still trying to resolve those discrepancies. Now, out of that 30%, how much of that would maybe be released later on? We don't know that yet. But if they do any more releasing, if let's say they increase that to 90%, or even if they say you can use the entire full 30% between now and the September when we close the federal, we would use all of those old apportionments first, those pre-built apportionments first.
Can I just add one thing? So the backdrop for this is that, you know, we request funds from Federal Highway for redistribution, and we won't have a final determination on that, Ron, until when?
First of September, September
Yeah.
1st.
So I just wanted to be clear that, you know, this is preparatory work for a request that KYTC is making that we all hope and believe should be approved. But just for clarity that there's more steps in the process.
Yes.
Make a motion.
We need a motion to approve. We have a motion and a second, to approve, I guess you call it a loan to the state.
Yeah. You, but this is
A reapplication of our funds.
And as I mentioned, one more point, if I may, we will, and the commitment has been made to get this in writing, just like it has been in the prior iterations of it, so.
The motion would be like, well, 6 pages, came up with that, or 40 minutes, that would be the motion.
Correct. Correct. Up to.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Andy, I think we're going to drop out here. If you don't need us anymore, I think Susan and I, we're going to drop off here.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Thank you, Ron. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Appreciate you. Number 7, item number 3, to the Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the 23-26 Transportation Improvement Plan. Chris. Hi, Chris.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about amendment 3 now, and this is gonna be an actionable item. So I believe it would be 2 actions, one to the MTP and one to the TIP. The amendment, so this began back May 3rd, when I requested new or existing project changes. At the time, we received 10 project updates in total, and 7 of them were exempt projects. Those went into Amendment 2, which was approved by the TPC last month, and Amendment 3 into the remaining 3, which are all non-exempt. Brief summary of them, we've got NDOT's widening of I-65. There's updates to the non-exempt status. It originally said exempt for some reason. There's a project cost and tip funding update. Then we have NDOT again with I-64 at travel lanes. We're updating the description, the project cost and the tip funding on that. And then we have Louisville Metro's Reimagine 9th Street. For that one, we're updating the cost, adding some phases and updating the tip funding. I have the full list in the meeting packet and it can also be viewed on the website. Unless anyone has any questions, that I'll have for you all. This one's been a long time coming.
Any questions for the break? Do we need to take the 2 different votes?
Keep first.
All right. And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the MPP plan. Any more discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The next one is the tip plan. We have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is the Unified Planning Work Program Amendment. Andy.
Yes, sir. This should be relatively brief. So back in April, well, we'll start back in February. In February, I bring a draft UPWP Unified Planning Work Program to the TPC that describes our planned expenditures and our planned activities over the upcoming fiscal year. Sometime around late April, that gets finalized. And next slide, please, Greg. Here we are early in the fiscal year, and it's already time to amend the thing. So the amendment was proposed, first proposed by TARP. There's a couple of FTA grants that FTA has required TARP to ensure get included into this thing called the UPWP's work program. Next slide, please. So we took the opportunity to make some other changes. We had some that were awaiting amendment also, all of which were relatively minor. So we talked about TARP, those 2 grants. One is known as a Route Restoration Award, and the other one is called Areas of Persistent Poverty Grant. Do I have that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're a mouthful.
Yes, they are. The APP grant or something like that. Anyways, secondly, so we got those in there. Secondly, the 2 KIPTA funded PL studies that were approved, I believe in late June, at last month's meeting. That's the Louisville Metro Bike Implementation Plan and the J-Town Gaslight Square Study. That funding was approved. It was never at risk. But what we've done in the original UPWP, I had in there reserved for planning studies. So same amount of money. Now we have names put to the dollars. Okay, so no major issue there. Third, the subscription that we maintain with this company called Streetlight that provides us with an immense amount of traffic data. It costs a little more this year, so we've added like $9,000 in change to the Streetlight line item in our work program. And last but not least, NDOT has requested an NDOT or an Indiana specific funding table that's now included in the proposed amended document. Slide, please. We had a public comment period, much like our TIP and MTP amendments. This thing requires a public comment period. We did not receive any public comments. And believe it or not, we have another amendment that's already expected in August. There's a request, made by Park once again, for another one.
Chark and Metro.
Park and Metro,
That's the
excuse me.
joint,
Thank you.
not discussed slightly.
And then, but that's not the only one. There's let's see, there's another planning effort that will be added to that. So there's at least gonna be two things. We will kick off that public comment period in the next few days. We need to get started probably in the first couple of days of August. And then I'll be back with you guys, next month for that one. So I know you can't wait. So, TPC approval of this amendment is requested.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the amendment. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 9 is the SHIP working group. Andy again.
Thanks, sir. At the meeting, at the TTCC meeting earlier this month, a working group was established, or perhaps we should say reestablished, to fulfill the MPO's obligations regarding the KYTC shift process, the 2024 shift process. You all may recall that we had a working group in the, let's say, the spring that helped determine which projects were to be sponsored in that process. And then now we're reestablishing that to go through the boost process. Real quick, for those that don't know, I think everybody does, but the shift process is the data-driven process that KYTC has implemented over the past decade or so that go toward scoring projects and to do a data-driven process that allows them to perhaps more fairly compare projects as projects get as their highway plan gets built. So in these odd years, if you will, odd numbered years, this is an odd year for other reasons, but the odd number of years, they request MPO and add assistance to do that sponsorship and boosting. Excellent. Yes, sir. So it's data driven because it includes those 5 components. Those haven't changed. But in this year's shift, they've added a bike ped element, which is good because that might more closely align the shift scores perhaps to MPOs, not just KIPTAs, but perhaps others across the state. Our scoring for our MPP processing certainly includes favorable treatment for bike and ped projects. And it's good to see that KYTC has some points in there now for them. And secondly, a resilience factor is new to it this year. So here's a bit of a summary of the shift process milestones. We are somewhere in that upper, just about in the upper half, if you will. The projects certainly have been sponsored by KYTC, ads and MPOs. Those projects are getting scored. I guess right now, the schedule has the scores getting to MPOs and ads in July. We haven't seen them yet. We're told they're very, very imminent. So we're eagerly awaiting those. Can't wait.
Almost there.
Almost there, we're told. Statewide priorities. I think that's part that, as I understood it, at least as of last week, that was a bit of the issue. Statewide priorities. Some of the projects get taken off the top. Okay, projects on the interstates and whatnot, they typically get taken off the top. Those are not in need of boosting at the local level. Boosting counts for 20% of the score this year. That's less than it was before. It used to be 70-30. The black box score was 70, if you will. Now that's 80. The boosting accounts for a total of 20%. That 20, by the way, is 10% or 10 points, if you will. Same difference. The score is 100. Max score is 100. So 10% can come from KYTC when they boost it, and if the ad or MPO, whatever the case might be, boosts that same project, that project gets 20 boosted points, 20 bonus points. So it's sometimes important that we work together and boost similar projects. At that point, district rankings are established, and at least at the district level, the recommended projects for that go into the recommended highway plan. And then sometime typically in the spring of the even years, so being enacted. So here it is, kind of summarized on a little schedule thing. Again, that TTCC working group, kind of bottom middle, we're going to get together on August 9th. So for those of you that are on the TTCC, those of you that have staff that serve on the TTCC, August 9th, we will not have a regularly scheduled meeting. Instead of the regularly scheduled meeting, we will have this working group meeting. So same time as usual, second Wednesday, 1 o'clock. But we're gonna do this working group meeting. So that, what does that mean? That means in part that our friends from Indiana can take the month off. We'll see you in September. Actually, we might not be in September, but we'll see you in the meeting soon. More on that later. So real importantly, those boosts are needed back to KYTC. The latest schedule I've seen has that in about mid-September. So it's critical that we, as the TPC, approve those at our August 24th meeting, so next month. Summary on the sponsorship. There were 93 sponsored projects region-wide. Okay, many were sponsored by KYTC, many were sponsored by the KIPT MPO. Good mix across the counties, types of projects. Next slide, please. So how many boosts do we get? Boosts have come down by 10%, I think statewide. There says it at the top even. So from the last shift process, all these agencies, we get fewer boosts. So you can see on the right-hand side are the MPOs. So we're referred to as Louisville there. And so Louisville gets 18 boosts. Okay, so 18 projects. TPC can choose to add or give 10 bonus points to. That's what that means. Okay, we can't give lots of bonus points to one and just a bonus point or two to another. But we can give 10 points to 18 projects. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that District 5 has 29 boosts. So that's that's an 8-county region. So those 29 projects will be spread across 8 counties. And maybe down the middle, you'll see KIPTA's name on there. That refers to the KIPTA ad. So the rural KIPTA counties, there are 9 boosts allocated to those 4 counties of Shelby, Spencer, Trimble, and Henry. Next slide. That's all I've got. Again, we're gonna get together on August 9th. It's pending. We gotta get the scores first. We can't boost until we have scores. So August 9th is still the plan. I hope to get out as soon as we get it, the scores, pass those along. And then hopefully that comes very, very soon. And then we will in-house, add, let's say, the MTP score. So we'll have a nice comparison that this working group can work under and do some adding to their, to the KYTC spreadsheet, if you will. That way we'll have something to work from in this room in a real constructive meeting on August 9th. Be happy to answer any questions. That concludes that agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Anticipated timeframe, we'll get the scores.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Mid to late July was the target and we're right on it.
Yeah. So I will, like I said, they show up tomorrow afternoon, and I'll effectively forward tomorrow afternoon.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, you don't need any action.
No, sir. That's correct.
Okay, next item is a budget review subcommittee on transportation hearing update.
Okay, I don't have a presentation on this one, but at a meeting last week of the budget committee on transportation, I think it was a subcommittee on transportation, joint committee, State House and State Senate. Myself, Mr. Kaler from the OKI MPO, Cincinnati MPO, and Mr. Avila, MPO director at the Lexington area MPO, were invited to come speak to that committee about MPOs. We were joined at that session with our friends from the KYTC Office of Transportation Delivery, the transit folks at KYTC, if you will. So they spoke for the first half an hour, 45 minutes, and then the MPOs, we got up and we said our piece. We informed those folks on what MPOs do, who are the MPOs across Kentucky, okay? And some of them were quite unfamiliar with MPOs, but that makes sense, right? Because MPOs only exist in those urban areas. And so some of those folks on that committee don't have urban areas in there, or large urban areas in their jurisdictions. Kind of the main takeaway I had on that one was that those folks really do want to be engaged with the MPOs and the ads on this shift process. That was top of their mind too. And so, we've worked with them in the past and we will work with them in the future. Hopefully we get better each time on helping them help us type thing. Letting them know, hey, here's the projects, just so you know, here's the projects that are on the table. We're always happy to meet with them. And we'll have a renewed commitment to doing just that and keeping them as engaged as we can at the MPO level. Otherwise, we just kind of talked about what the MPOs are. What do we do? What's the funding that gets directly allocated to the MPOs, like the SLO dollars. I think that was a topic that is not fully understood by a whole lot of folks. And perhaps a slight misunderstanding. The SHIFT process feeds the highway plan, which is often very different or similar, but different from that SLO projects. When we do a call for projects at the KIPTA table, that's for typically separate dollar amounts. So we clarified that a little bit because that's unique to the larger MPOs, Cincinnati, Lexington, and the locals of the world. So be happy to answer any questions, but it was a good experience, and so we shared a good word about MPOs and that.
Any questions, comments? All right. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead with number 11, amendment board schedule to the Connecting Kentucky 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Chris?
For this one, I'm talking about our proposed schedule for Amendment 4. As you guys know, amendments can take a little bit of time. I got a request to all the sponsors to submit any other updates by August 24th. And in the past, we've gotten a number of questions regarding the process. So I quickly wanted to go over a little review of the process. Amendments and add-ons are the methods available to update the TIP and MTP. The updates can be submitted at any time, even after the request or as soon as you have something you want to communicate to us. And if staff's going to work and determine the best way to proceed as timely as possible. The easiest starting point is to fill out the PIPTA project application. So I kind of did these screenshots just to assist folks in case it's needed. It's a 3-step process. You're going to go to the planning portal. And to get there, you go onto our website through the TIP. Then you select forms, and then under the forms, you'll see a number of forms, including the cost increase and the phase shift form, but you're going to want to select the KIPTA project application form. These are going to be updated in the future, but right now this is the process. So keep it for that. So the TIP amendments, they are usually for the regionally significant changes. They must be presented to the general public, and you have to include an opportunity for the public to provide it. They need to be presented and approved by the TPC, and the projects that the quality. Those are typically the non-exempt projects. Those are going to require more. And they have to go through ensure the conformity analysis. Yeah. So the changes for amendments, usually they're changes that are ineligible for admin funds, which are a quicker process. And I'm going to review a little bit of that in the next presentation. There are changes that are in the design concept or the scope, changes that in the cost that trigger a new fiscal constraint determination, or changes to a project that affect air quality conformity determination. Like I said, the amendments take time. This is the overview of the whole process. In total, it could be around 3 months that it takes to put an amendment together. So that's why we've got our deadline of the 24th. If you want any of your changes to go into this amendment. And I'll probably send another email reminder. I sent the first one back in mid-July. We built in enough time for a full amendment, which would include the air quality analysis. And our public comments are going to start in late September. The KIPTA committees will review and we will seek approval in October. Does anyone have any questions? That's not an action.
I see no questions, so we'll go ahead with number 12. You're up again, administrative modification.
Another presentation for this thing too. So in the kit, I just said at admin mods 1 and 2, but I'm going to talk a little bit about 3, which we haven't completed yet, but we're in the end stages of that. Details. So in contrast to amendments, the admin mods are used for the more minor updates, and if these are updates to the tip, the amendments are to the tip and often the M2P as well. New projects can be added through admin mods if they're eligible under the group projects policy. These projects typically cannot exceed a total project maximum cost. And the original intent or product scope can't be changed through admin. Typically, admin mods are tip funding updates, shifting projects, phase schedules, correcting clerical errors. Those are all the types of changes that we do through amendments. Admin mod 1, I've talked to most of you about in the past. That one we processed on July 3rd, so it was after the last TPC meeting. So just a quick little review. The full list of 57 projects with updates can be viewed on our website. Back before we finalized it, I requested everyone with project changes to look over our draft and get back with me. So I did have opportunity at that time. And yeah, we assisted on July 3rd, so that's all done. Admin mod 2, we processed on July 11th. This was a shorter one. And I think that Oldham County project, that's the one that Andy had referred to earlier with the special TPC meeting. So we got that in there. The Oldham County is KY 329, updated the tip funding, and then we also included Clarksville's revision. Updated the tip funding. And again, the full project details can be, it's already posted. So for administrative modification 3, which I'd like to complete by this week, we are still ironing out a few details. One of these may have to drop off, but we've got the joint Jeffersonville, 9th Street and Clarksville Montgomery Ave multimodal connection. That one, we're modifying the tip funding and correcting the funding source. We've got, and this one, we're still kind of working on the details, Mount Washington's historic memorial multi-use trail. We're gonna correct and update the total estimated project costs and some tip funding clerical errors that we previously had. We've got Louisville Metro's River Road, modifying the tip funding, adding a utilities phase, and shifting the construction phase. We've got Oldham County's Old LaGrange Road improvements, the bike head trail, we're modifying the tip funding and the total project costs. Clarksville's Blackiston Mill Road Phase 2, correcting a clerical error, and also Clark County's CR 403 and Stacy Road intersection improvements. Also had a clerical error with updating the phase years and modifying tip funding on that slide. And then I've got 3 new projects. These are going to get added by our group projects policy that I mentioned earlier. These are all KYTC projects, and they are all having to do with installing wrong way signs. They're split up per county. The Jefferson County one, these are the exits numbers here on this slideshow. Once I process it, the whole list will be on our website, or if anyone wants to take closer before then, they can get with me. I'll shoot them an email. All 3 of these are HSMP state dollars, and they all have open to public dates in 2026. So then I've also got
Question on that one.
Yeah.
Is am I reading this, that 3 new wrong way sign at all these intersections cost $1.7 million?
All of those in total.
It's three signing projects.
One per county.
Okay.
3 projects. The Jefferson County version of it includes 30 interchanges, or how many? I don't remember how many, 28 interchanges, for that dollar.
For signs? Some of the
Signs.
sign companies making money.
We recently had a $16 million NDOT sign project that got no bids. 16 million to do signs. It was large. It was re-signing Act 265 or a state Act 265 to become Act 265. So
That's right.
I don't think you're wrong.
Maybe I should get into the sign business.
Isidro also mentioned that, striping will be addressed with that as well. And there's not insignificant maintenance of traffic. So, I mean, it's one of those things that is a little counterintuitive when you kind of look at it and think about it on the surface, but the benefits from doing those types of things far outweigh the costs.
Understood, thank you. It just seemed like a lot, you know.
Yeah, so that's the Jefferson County list. And Bullitt County. Less signs. Project costs. Those are the exits there, and then and the full list is not currently on our website because it's still in the works, but should be done by the end of this week. Any other questions, we can email these lists.
Real time information right here. Great news. Yes.
As it breaks.
So requested, is there any other questions?
Questions, comments? Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next item, MPO Director's Report. Andy.
Thank you, sir. I mentioned one of the things on my list that is, and I'll remind once again, for those that either attend TTCC or your staff attends TTCC, August 9th is going to be that time. It's going to be for the working group, not for a full meeting. So again, if you're not a Kentucky LPA or KYTC or Kentucky related project sponsor, we've got the afternoon off that day. Moving on, similar to this, Chris's update on amendment schedules, I would like to update the TPC on meeting schedules, okay? A couple things are in play here, so I'll start month by month. August, business as usual. TPC should be expected, we'll meet next month on August 24th, same time next week. September, we have, or typically, maybe let's say 1 month in each summer, we regularly kind of take a month off from TPC and often TTCC meetings. September could be our month. We don't have anything in ink on an agenda for September. As Chris recently alluded to, we do have amendment scheduled for October. So October will certainly be a regular meeting month, October 26th. November is always a unique month around here because that's the time of our annual meeting. The 4th Thursday of the month is often or always or often Thanksgiving. And so this year's KIPTA annual meeting will be on September 14th. November 14th, excuse me, thank you. November 14th. That means it's gonna be in Shelbyville. The TPC meeting traditionally has been immediately prior to the board meeting that goes with the annual meeting there. And so to be determined on whether or not the TPC will meet in Shelbyville on November 14th, or we may look to host the TPC meeting on the 5th Thursday. We don't get 5th Thursdays very often in a month. We may host it on the 5th Thursday here in the normal time at KIPTA. More on that in coming months. And then December, we typically do not have a meeting because again, the 4th Thursdays and the holidays. So again, we'll keep you up to date on these meeting notices. Just a reminder that August is business as usual. All right, next item on my agenda here is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. The selection committee recently selected their highest scoring firm. I will be taking that to the KIPTA board of directors here in about 20 minutes. That's the firm that was the highest scoring was HDR, a partnership between HDR and Palmer Engineering and Taylor Sifter Williams. The Palmer and HDR, for those of you that may be cognizant of the Vision Zero Louisville plan from about 2 or 3 years ago, they teamed up then, and so they're going to team up again on KIPTA studies. That's pretty exciting. So we have more information on that coming soon. So I wanted to make that announcement. And then one more item, last week, while at the exact same time as that budget subcommittee hearing, the Indiana MPO Council hosted a special meeting. And that was called basically on behalf of the Indianapolis MPO, but more specifically, I guess, the mayor of Indianapolis and the chief of staff of the city of Indianapolis. And it was regarding the community crossings funding. I think I can summarize it appropriately. I think it went as follows. The big city is saying we can only get a little bit of this money, while real small county Indiana is getting a much higher share on a per capita basis than the big city is. Okay. And so, as I understand it, they came with a proposal that would, in essence, provide more funding to virtually the vast majority of counties and communities in Indiana. And as a byproduct, I suppose the small counties would get a little bit less, or at least less per capita. And so I don't know that there's any action. Kyle and Spencer were there. Did I summarize that appropriately?
Yeah, that was the main takeaway. And then they also wanted to have the state, I guess, allocate more funds to community crossings and potentially make it more of a formula fund type of grant program. So, you know, maybe you get a little bit less money than you might get in a given year by applying for a grant, then you don't have to apply, you know, use administrative resources to apply every single year. You would just get X amount of dollars based on, and they actually want to use VMT on all not interstate and non-state roads. So like if you have more VMT, like you live in maybe a smaller or a medium-sized county, but you have a lot of a factory or warehousing, you would actually get more funding because you have a lot of VMT still.
At least as proposed, I think Clark and Floyd counties were both going to get between, let's say, as proposed anyway, so they get 25 to 30 to 35% more dollars with this proposal. Yeah, the urban areas are going to get more because it's going to be based on perhaps something, you know, perhaps you could state your case more fair, PMP, for example.
Is community crossings like kind of like transportation alternatives, or I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It's an Indiana.
Yeah, state grant.
Okay.
Yeah, we got,
But like for
It's
iPad, or is it anything?
you cannot use it to build new streets.
Okay.
It's basically road maintenance. Sidewalks, yes,
Okay.
gutters, stuff like, as long as you're paving down the road, you can put new catch basins,
Mhm.
sidewalks. Maximum,
sorry there.
maximum of $1 million.
Mhm.
Municipalities, depending on your population, have to match at either a 25 or 50% level.
Yeah, so the counties under 20,000.
We have to do.
It's only been around for what? Less than a decade?
2016.
Yeah, 2016, 17 is when it was started.
Yeah.
It's primarily funded by the increases in motor fuel tax that they've been putting on for the last 5 or 6 years.
Thank you.
Again, I mean, as an urban transportation policy committee, I think our interests are likely aligned with the folks that were presenting at that committee hearing. So if we hear more, we'll share more.
In fact, our deadline right now for the second calling is Friday.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of getting mine turned in for tomorrow for the second calling, which we'll end up using for next year.
So hopefully year after that, let's say, hopefully if something like this happens, there'd be more to go around.
Yeah, they do 2 calls for projects per year, and you're only allowed to have two active projects at the same time, and if you have one active project, you can only submit one application in the following 2-year cycle.
Yeah. Working.
Yeah. Yeah, they're talking about, urban areas, the places the MT seem to work paying the most, but get not near as much. I think they said like Marion County got like 2% of all the funds in a given year and paid in like 12%, something like that.
Yeah, to be clear, if Clark and Floyd are growing by 25 or 35% based on this proposal, I think Marion County is going to grow by, I think, 50.
It's helped us.
For that same phenomenon. Spencer's describing.
We did over $800,000 with improvements this year. With the little funding we have, take 80-20. To use, we'll apply for everything we can for the grant on what my budget is. The 20 the match.
So we'll see what comes up. They were telling it to a bunch of MPO folks, and so they're gonna be agreeable to it, obviously, right? One with the city. So that concludes my report.
Anyone have any questions of Andy? Being none, is there any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. We have a motion, second, all in favor?